Have you ever wondered how silence can carry the heaviest truths? How a child's whisper, often dismissed, might hold the very key to saving a life? Life teaches us in unexpected ways, sometimes through laughter, other times through tears, and every so often through the unspoken things, the faint smells, the fleeting memories, the voices that too many ignore. In the silent, sterile halls of St. Mary's Medical Center, a grieving 8-year-old girl is the only one who can smell the scent of death, a faint, bitter almond odor that once lingered on her father's final breath and now clings to a powerful, dying man, making her the unexpected key to uncovering a shocking murder plot and a vengeful doctor hiding in plain sight. Before we continue with this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Oh, and don't forget to comment below where you're watching us from. We love to know that. Sofia Alvarez was 8 years old, and she carried silence like a shadow. Her father, Miguel, had passed away 11 months earlier. The doctors had called it unexplained organ failure. But Sofia remembered it differently. She remembered the sound of his shallow breathing, the ashen grey of his skin, and most of all, the strange, unforgettable smell of almonds lingering in the air. Sweet and bitter at once, like a warning nobody else seemed to hear. Her mother, Eleanor, tried to be strong. She worked as a cleaning assistant at St. Mary's Medical Center, scrubbing hallways that smelled of disinfectant and hope, while Sofia often sat quietly in the waiting areas, reading worn-out storybooks or sketching on scraps of paper. The hospital had become a second home, though not one Sofia had chosen. On the morning our story begins, autumn sunlight filtered through the tall windows of the hospital lobby. Outside, leaves painted the sidewalks in shades of gold and crimson. Inside, Sofia clutched her father's old rosary in her pocket, a habit she never abandoned. Elena noticed her daughter's faraway gaze. "Sofia, mi corazón," she whispered. "You should try to play with the other children in the courtyard." But Sofia only shook her head. "I like being near you." Eleanor smiled, though sadness flickered in her eyes. She wanted her daughter to laugh again, to run, to feel like a child. Yet she knew grief had wrapped itself around Sofia's heart too tightly. That same morning, whispers spread across the hospital. A high-profile patient had been admitted. Nurses rushed down corridors, and doctors' voices grew sharp and urgent. Sofia watched from a distance, curiosity lighting her small face. Later, while sitting on a bench near the intensive care wing, she overheard fragments of conversation. "Mr. Jonathan Reed," one nurse murmured. "The pharmaceutical giant?" another asked. "Yes, collapsed suddenly, difficulty breathing, his skin—" A pause. "Grey, like ash." Sofia's heart skipped. Her tiny fingers tightened around the rosary. Grey skin, breathing struggles. And then, as a nurse hurried past, the faintest trace of a smell drifted in the air. Almonds, sweet and bitter. The same scent she had smelled during her father's final hours. Her chest tightened. She whispered to herself, "It's happening again." But who would believe her? Last year, when she tried to tell the doctors about her father, they had smiled kindly and said, "Children notice strange things, don't worry." Her words had been brushed aside, drowned by adult certainty. Still, Sofia couldn't ignore it. She rose from the bench, her small shoes clicking softly against the polished floor, and wandered closer to Reed's room. 2 security guards stood nearby, but she only lingered at the end of the corridor, close enough to catch another whiff of that haunting odor. The memory of her father's last night surged back. "Mija," Miguel had whispered, his hand trembling in hers. "Never stop speaking the truth, even if no one listens." Tears pricked Sofia's eyes. She blinked them away. If nobody else noticed, then it was up to her. Inside the ICU, Dr. Whitmore, the hospital's chief physician, reviewed test results with frustration. "His lungs are failing," he muttered to a colleague. "But the scans, they don't match any known condition. We're missing something." Sofia's small voice echoed in her mind, though she hadn't spoken yet. "I know what it is. I've seen it before." That night, as Elena tucked her into the small bed they shared in their modest apartment, Sofia could not sleep. She stared at the ceiling, her thoughts swirling. The image of Jonathan Reed's ashen face would not leave her, neither would the smell of almonds. "Elena?" Sofia whispered, her voice breaking the quiet. Her mother turned, brushing hair from her daughter's forehead. "What is it, Emma?" What if Mr. Reed has what Papa had?" Elena's expression froze, sadness rushing in like a tide. "Sofia, sometimes our minds connect things because of grief." "No," Sofia insisted softly, shaking her head. "It's the same. I know it." Elena pulled her close, holding her tightly. "Sleep now, mi niña. Tomorrow is another day." But as Sofia closed her eyes, her father's words returned again. Never stop speaking the truth. The truth was heavy for a child to carry. Yet Sofia felt it pressing against her, urging her to act. She didn't know how or who would listen. But deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning. Sometimes the voices we silence, whether from children, the elderly, or the forgotten, carry the truth we most need to hear. Listening, truly listening, can mean the difference between life and death. How many truths are lost in the spaces where no one listens? How many lives change because we dismiss the smallest voices? The morning at St. Mary's Medical Center began with a storm brewing outside. Rain tapped softly against the tall glass windows, like insistent fingers begging to be noticed. Sofia sat on the same wooden bench in the corridor, her small frame almost swallowed by the silence around her. She had seen enough yesterday: the grey skin, the shallow breathing, the smell of almonds lingering like a ghost. She knew what she had to do. But fear gripped her chest. What if they laughed again, like last time? From down the hall, a group of doctors emerged, their white coats flowing as they spoke hurriedly. At the center was Dr. Samuel Whitmore, tall and composed, with silver hair and deep lines carved into his forehead. He was the kind of man people listened to, everyone except perhaps little girls. Sofia stood, her heart pounding. She took a step forward, then another. Her shoes squeaked on the polished floor. "Dr. Whitmore," she called, her voice trembling. The group stopped. The chief physician turned, surprised by the sight of the child. "Yes, can I help you?" Sofia swallowed hard. "The man in that room, Mr. Reed. He smells like almonds, sweet and bitter. My papa smelled the same before he died." For a moment silence stretched in the hallway. One of the younger doctors chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Children notice all sorts of things," he said dismissively. Another nurse bent toward Sofia with a practiced smile. "Sweetheart, why don't you sit back down? These things are complicated. Don't worry, we're doing everything we can." But Sofia stood firm, her tiny fists clenched at her sides. "No, I know what I smelled. Nobody listened when Papa was sick, and then he died. Please listen this time." Her voice cracked, her eyes glistening with urgency. The group exchanged uneasy glances. Whitmore studied her, his brow furrowed. He had seen grief etched into the faces of countless patients' families, but there was something in this child's tone, an unshakable certainty that pierced through the usual haze of sorrow. Yet even he hesitated. "I appreciate your concern," he said gently. "But sometimes illnesses create strange odors. It doesn't always mean what we think it does." Frustration burned in Sofia's chest. She wanted to scream, to shake him, to make him see. Instead, she whispered, almost to herself, "That smell means death." Dr. Whitmore's eyes narrowed. For a fleeting moment a memory stirred, medical school lectures, an obscure case study, something about almonds. He brushed it aside quickly, unwilling to give weight to a child's observation in front of his team. "We'll take care of him," he said firmly, and the group moved on. Sofia sank back onto the bench, her legs trembling. Once again, her words had dissolved into the air, ignored and forgotten. Hours passed. Nurses rushed in and out of Reed's room. Machines beeped with steady urgency. Sofia waited, her heart heavy, until her mother appeared with tired eyes and a bucket of cleaning supplies. "Elena," Sofia whispered, tugging at her sleeve. "They won't listen, just like before." Elena knelt down, cupping her daughter's face. "Mija, you tried. That's all anyone can do." "But it's not enough," Sofia insisted, tears streaking her cheeks. "He'll die if they don't hear me, just like Papa." Her mother's eyes filled with pain. She pulled Sofia close, stroking her hair. "Sometimes the world doesn't listen, even when it should." But deep down, Sofia knew silence wasn't an option. Her father's words echoed inside her. Never stop speaking the truth. That evening, as the rain outside thickened into a storm, Sofia made a choice. She wouldn't stop. She would find another way to be heard, even if her voice shook, even if the world turned its back again. And in the shadows of that hospital, fate was shifting. The truth waited, demanding to be revealed. The smallest voice, when ignored, can become the heaviest regret. Courage is not in being heard immediately, but in refusing to fall silent. Do memories ever return when we need them most, like lanterns in the dark? Or do they lie buried until someone, perhaps the least expected, lights the way? That night, long after the storm had passed, Dr. Samuel Whitmore sat alone in his office. The hospital had grown quieter, the hallways dimmed to a hushed glow. On his desk lay charts, scans, and lab results of Jonathan Reed. All inconclusive, all meaningless against the relentless decline of his patient. He rubbed his temples, exhaustion gnawing at him, but Sofia's trembling voice echoed in his mind. "He smells like almonds, sweet and bitter. My papa smelled the same before he died." Almonds. The word stuck like a thorn. At first he tried to dismiss it. A grieving child, clinging to a connection between her father and Reed, but medicine had taught him never to ignore patterns, especially the ones others overlooked. Whitmore leaned back, staring at the ceiling. A memory stirred, faint as a whisper. Medical school, decades ago, a lecture hall filled with restless students. His professor's stern voice, "Remember this, always. A patient who smells faintly of bitter almonds may be suffering from cyanide poisoning. Not everyone can detect the odor, but when you do, it is not to be ignored." Whitmore sat upright. His pulse quickened. Cyanide. But how? Reed hadn't been exposed to any chemicals as far as he knew. And cyanide poisoning was rare, almost unthinkable in this context. Still, the pieces clicked uncomfortably in his mind. The grey skin, the rapid decline, the failure of every test to find a cause. He opened Reed's chart again, his pen tapping nervously against the paper. Could a child's memory really unlock the truth? The office door creaked open. Dr. Patel, a young resident, peeked in. "Dr. Whitmore, Reed's oxygen levels are dropping again. We're running out of options." Whitmore closed the file slowly. "Tell me something, Patel. Have you noticed any unusual odors near Reed's room?" Patel frowned. "Odors? No, sir. Just the usual antiseptic." Whitmore hesitated, then said quietly, "What about almonds?" Patel blinked. "Almonds? No. Why?" "Never mind," Whitmore muttered, dismissing him. But as Patel left, Whitmore's doubt grew stronger. Not everyone could smell it. Perhaps that's why no one else noticed. The following morning, Sofia was back in the corridor, sitting cross-legged on the bench with her rosary between her fingers. When Whitmore walked past, she lifted her head, her eyes searching his face. "Did you believe me?" she asked softly. He paused. Doctors were not supposed to entertain children's fears, but something in her gaze, a mix of sorrow and fierce determination, unsettled him. "Tell me again," he said. Sofia stood, her small hands trembling. Papa was sick. His skin turned grey. He could barely breathe, and the smell, it was like almonds, not just sweet, bitter too. Nobody listened. Then he died. Her voice faltered, but she pushed on. "Yesterday I smelled it again. On Mr. Reed, it's the same, I know it." Whitmore's throat tightened. The words carried weight, heavier than any chart. He nodded slowly. "Thank you, Sofia." Her eyes widened, as if she wasn't sure she'd heard right. "You believe me?" "I believe—" He hesitated. "I believe we need to look closer." For the first time, hope flickered across her face. Whitmore hurried back to his office, his mind racing. He ordered a toxicology test, something no one else had suggested. His colleagues raised eyebrows, questioning his judgment, but his tone left no room for debate. "Run it now. Test for cyanide." Hours later, as the sun dipped low and painted the windows in orange light, the results arrived. Positive, lethal levels of cyanide detected. Whitmore froze, staring at the report. Sofia had been right. An 8-year-old girl had noticed what 20 doctors had missed. He rushed to Reed's room, barking orders. "Prepare the antidote kit. Administer immediately." Nurses scrambled, adrenaline filling the air. The antidote coursed into Reed's veins, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, his breathing eased. The grey pallor began to lift. Life, fragile but stubborn, clung to him once more. Whitmore stood at the foot of the bed, chest heaving with relief. He glanced toward the hallway, where Sofia peeked timidly from behind the doorframe. Their eyes met. He gave a small nod, a silent acknowledgement. "You saved him." Sometimes wisdom does not come from years of study, but from the pure, unshaken eyes of those who notice what others ignore. Listening, truly listening, can change destiny. How much of life's suffering is caused not by chance, but by choice, by the quiet hand of someone who decides another's fate in the shadows? The crisis in Jonathan Reed's room had settled. His breathing was steadier, his skin less ashen. The antidote had worked, but the test results left the staff reeling. Cyanide, poison, not illness, a deliberate act. The hospital, once buzzing with routine urgency, now carried a different weight. Whispers spread from ward to ward. Who would dare poison one of the most powerful men in the country? And how had it gone unnoticed for so long? The answer would not come from doctors. It would come from the woman who arrived later that afternoon, her coat still damp from the rain. Detective Angela Brooks stepped into the ICU wing with a steady stride. She was in her early 50s, with sharp eyes that had seen too much and a voice calm enough to draw out truths even from the most guarded souls. She flashed her badge to the startled nurse at the station. "Detective Brooks, NYPD," she said. "I understand we have a case of attempted murder." Dr. Whitmore approached, fatigue etched into his features. "We're certain now. Cyanide poisoning. Without the antidote, he would have been gone within the hour." Brooks studied him. "And you say it was a child who pointed you in the right direction?" Whitmore hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, an 8-year-old girl named Sofia Alvarez. Her father died here last year under nearly identical circumstances. At the time, we called it organ failure. But now..." His voice faltered. "Now, I wonder." The detective's eyes narrowed. "I'll need to speak with her." She found Sofia sitting quietly in the corner of the corridor, her rosary wrapped around her fingers. Elena, her mother, hovered protectively nearby, wary of yet another stranger asking questions. Brooks knelt down so her eyes were level with the child's. "Sophia, my name is Angela. I'm here because you noticed something very important, something no one else did. I'd like you to tell me what you saw." Sophia glanced at her mother, who gave a small nod of encouragement. Her voice was soft but steady. "When Papa was sick, I smelled almonds. Sweet and bitter. Nobody listened, and then he was gone. Yesterday I smelled the same thing on Mr. Reed. I knew it was the same." Angela leaned in slightly. "Did you see anyone unusual near your father? Anyone who came into his room more than the others?" Sophia's eyes clouded with memory. She squeezed the rosary tighter. "There was a woman. She said she was a nurse, but I never saw her with the others. She had red hair tied up in a bun and blue glasses. She gave Papa injections. She said they were special treatments, but he only got worse." Eleanor gasped softly, tears rising in her eyes. Brooks kept her tone calm. "And yesterday, did you see her again?" Sophia hesitated, then nodded. "In the hallway, near Mr. Reed's room. She was walking fast, like she didn't want anyone to notice." The detective's expression hardened. Red hair, blue glasses, not a description easy to forget. She stood, turning to Whitmore. "Doctor, check your staff records. Find out if anyone matches that description, and if not, then someone is impersonating your nurses." Whitmore nodded, already reaching for his phone. Meanwhile, Brooks placed a gentle hand on Sophia's shoulder. "You've been very brave, Sophia. You may have saved Mr. Reed's life." Sophia's eyes shimmered. "But I couldn't save Papa." The detective's voice softened. "What you're doing now may help us find the truth about him, too." As Brooks walked away, her mind raced. A red-haired woman in blue glasses slipping into patients' rooms unnoticed. A wealthy man targeted, but a poor immigrant father used as practice. The cruelty of it burned in her chest. This was no accident. This was a plan. And somewhere in the hospital, the hidden hand that had poisoned Jonathan Reed still lingered, waiting for the right moment to strike again. Evil often wears disguises, sometimes as kindness, sometimes as care. But truth, once spoken, begins to strip away the mask. And even the smallest witness can bring light to the darkest corners. What is more dangerous than an enemy we see? Perhaps it is the one who hides behind trust, wearing the face of care. Detective Angela Brooks wasted no time. She requested staff logs, visitor records, and security footage from the days leading up to Jonathan Reed's collapse. But in a hospital with hundreds of employees and endless movement in and out of rooms, answers were tangled in a web of routine. Still, Sophia's words clung to her. Red hair, blue glasses, special treatments. Late into the night, Brooks sat in the small office offered by the hospital. Files piled high, screens flickering with grainy camera images. She clicked through footage frame by frame, her pen tapping against her notebook. And then, there, a woman moving quickly down the corridor outside Miguel Alvarez's room almost a year ago. Red hair tied in a bun, thick blue-rimmed glasses. The timestamp matched the days before his sudden decline. Brooks leaned forward. "Got you," she whispered. She pulled up recent footage, this time outside Reed's ICU. The same figure appeared again, her posture stiff, her steps hurried. But the camera caught only fleeting glimpses before she turned a corner. The detective printed stills and carried them to Dr. Whitmore the next morning. "Do you recognize her?" she asked. Whitmore studied the images, his brow furrowed. "Not immediately. But if she's been walking these halls, she should be on our staff list." They convened in the conference room, summoning department heads to scan the photo. One by one they shook their heads, until a quiet voice spoke. "She looks like Dr. Evelyn Carter," murmured Dr. Patel, the resident. The room stilled. "Dr. Carter," Whitmore repeated. "That can't be right. She's one of our most respected anesthesiologists. Years of service, brilliant record." But, Patel added nervously, she always wears colored glasses in the operating room, blue, sometimes green, and her hair is naturally red. She usually keeps it tied up. Brooks lifted an eyebrow. Where is she now? Whitmore glanced at the schedule. She's on rotation this week, should be here. They searched, but Carter was nowhere to be found. Her locker stood empty, her office stripped of personal belongings. It was as though she had vanished overnight. Brooks's instincts flared. This wasn't panic, it was planning. Whoever Evelyn Carter really was beneath her white coat, she had prepared for this moment. Back in her temporary office, Brooks dug deeper. Public records, old interviews, academic history. A story began to emerge. Evelyn Carter had a brother, Daniel Carter, a programmer once employed by none other than Reed's pharmaceutical empire. Years earlier, Daniel had raised alarms about a flawed medical algorithm in Reed's company, one that prioritized wealthy patients while ignoring poorer ones. The scandal had been buried, Daniel discredited. Not long after he had taken his own life, the motive sharpened like glass: revenge. Miguel Alvarez, poor, immigrant, invisible, had been the test. Jonathan Reed was meant to be the headline. Brooks sat back, the weight of it heavy on her chest. A brilliant doctor had turned her skills into a weapon, using the very trust patients placed in her to strike at the powerful. But what chilled her most was this: Evelyn wasn't finished. Reed's survival had likely disrupted her plan, but vengeance rarely ended with a single attempt. That evening, Brooks found Sofia sitting with Elena in the hospital chapel, a candle flickering before them. "Sofia," she said gently, "you've helped us uncover something very important. You were right about the woman. She isn't a nurse. She's a doctor. A dangerous one." Sofia's small face tightened with fear. "Will she come back?" Brooks crouched down, her gaze steady. "She might. But this time, we're watching, and this time she won't hurt anyone else." The child clutched her rosary. "Papa always said the truth would protect me, but sometimes I'm still scared." Brooks softened. Being brave doesn't mean you're never scared. It means you don't let the fear silence you. Sofia nodded slowly, her eyes glistening with both fear and determination. In the distance, thunder rumbled again. The storm was not over. The mask of trust had been torn away, but Evelyn Carter was still out there, and her unfinished plan loomed over them all. Betrayal is sharpest when it comes from those we trust most. Yet even the cleverest disguise cannot withstand the persistence of truth. The eyes that notice, the voices that refuse silence, become the cracks where light pours in. The hospital was quieter than usual that night, the air heavy with unease. The storm outside pounded the city with sheets of rain, thunder rolling like a warning no one could ignore. Detective Angela Brooks walked the ICU floor, her instincts sharp. Security had been doubled, every door monitored, but she knew Evelyn Carter was too clever to simply walk in. She had trained here, lived here. She knew the hospital's veins better than anyone. Meanwhile, in a forgotten storage wing beneath the East Ward, Evelyn Carter sat in silence. The sterile glow of a single lamp illuminated her face, pale but fierce. Her disguise was gone. The blue glasses rested on the floor beside her, useless now. She ran her fingers over a syringe, the liquid inside catching the light. "Jonathan Reed," she whispered bitterly, "you should have paid with your life, just as Daniel did." Her brother's face flickered in her mind, his despair, his final words before the world crushed him under the weight of Reed's empire. Every patient she had chosen, every careful step was meant to build toward justice, but now her work teetered on the edge of collapse. Still, she would not stop, not when justice was so close. Back upstairs, Reed lay restless in his bed. Tubes hummed, machines blinked, but his mind, sharp despite his body's weakness, raced with fragments of conversations he once dismissed. Reports of flawed software, patient complaints, Daniel Carter's name buried in legal briefs. For the first time in years, Reed felt the shadow of guilt crawl into his chest. Was this his punishment? In the hallway outside, Angela Brooks studied the monitors, replaying every possible entry point Evelyn could use. Her gut told her it wasn't over tonight, and then she noticed something. "Wait," she said to a guard, "check the East Wing cameras." The guard frowned. "That section's been closed for renovations. No reason anyone should—" "Check it," Brooks insisted. Static filled the screen, then cleared. For a second, nothing. Then movement. A figure in a lab coat, face obscured by shadows, slipping through a side door. Brooks' pulse quickened. She's here. With 2 officers in tow, she headed down the dim corridor, their footsteps echoing against peeling walls. The storm rattled the old windows as they approached the storage wing. Inside, Evelyn heard them coming. Calmly, she tucked the syringe into her pocket and adjusted her coat. She had anticipated this moment. What they didn't know was that she had already set her plan in motion. When Brooks and her team pushed the door open, the room was empty, except for a single patient file lying on the desk. It was Sofia's. Brooks froze, the meaning sinking in like ice. Evelyn's revenge had shifted. No longer just Reed. The child who had spoken the truth was now at risk. A whisper of thunder cracked overhead as Brooks whispered to herself, "No. Not Sofia." Somewhere in the maze of the hospital, Evelyn Carter was moving again, and this time the storm was aimed at innocence itself. Revenge, once unleashed, often spirals beyond its target, consuming the innocent in its fire. The pursuit of justice without mercy becomes indistinguishable from cruelty, and in that storm, the line between victim and villain blurs. The hospital lights flickered under the storm's wrath, long shadows stretching across the tiled floors. Nurses whispered anxiously as thunder boomed, but none of them knew the danger had already seeped into their walls. Sofia Bennett sat quietly in a waiting room chair, legs swinging, a crayon in her hand. She drew the same shape again and again. A house with a sun above it, the kind of home she wished still felt whole. Her mother had gone to the restroom nearby, leaving her for only a moment. But sometimes a moment is all it takes. Evelyn Carter appeared at the far end of the hall, her face calm, her posture natural. She carried a clipboard, her lab coat buttoned neatly. To the casual eye, she was just another doctor moving with purpose. But her eyes locked on Sofia. "Hello, sweetheart," Evelyn said softly, kneeling as she reached the girl. "That's a beautiful drawing. May I see?" Sofia looked up, cautious but polite. Something about the woman's smile felt too practiced, too polished. Still, she held up the paper shyly. "It's my house, before my daddy got sick." Evelyn's chest tightened. The child's innocence brushed against her hardened resolve like a fragile feather against stone. For a heartbeat, she hesitated. But the memory of Daniel's lifeless body flared again, pulling her back into her mission. "You're very clever, Sofia," Evelyn said, lowering her voice. "Just like you were when you helped the doctors with Mr. Reed." Sofia's eyes widened. "How do you know that?" Evelyn's lips curved. "I know many things, and I know you're very brave." At that moment, Detective Angela Brooks stormed through the double doors at the far end, her heart pounding. She spotted the scene. Evelyn crouched in front of Sofia, too close, too focused. "Evelyn!" Angela's voice cut through the hall like lightning. Sofia flinched, clutching her crayon. Evelyn's smile faltered, then hardened into something colder. She stood facing the detective, her calm mask slipping into defiance. "You shouldn't be here," Brooks warned, her hand resting near her weapon. "Step away from the girl." Evelyn shook her head slowly. Do you know what Reed has done? How many lives were lost because of him? This child's father was just one of countless forgotten souls. Tell me, who speaks for them? Brooks took a careful step forward. Not like this. Justice doesn't come from terrorizing children. It comes from truth, Evelyn. And you've already been heard. Sofia made sure of that. Sofia blinked, looking between the two women. Her little voice trembled as she whispered, She was the one with the red glasses, the one who came to see my daddy. The truth hung heavy in the air. Evelyn's jaw clenched, her fingers twitching near the syringe hidden in her pocket. For a moment, Brooks thought she might lash out. Then Evelyn's eyes softened, just for an instant, as she looked at Sofia. The innocence in the girl's face, the unbroken thread of hope shining even through grief, cracked something in Evelyn's armor. You remind me of my brother, Evelyn murmured, voice shaking. So full of light before the world took it away. Brooks seized the hesitation. Then honor him differently. Don't let his memory be tied to fear. Let this end here, Evelyn. For a long, charged second, the storm outside seemed to hold its breath. Evelyn's hand lingered over her pocket, torn between vengeance and surrender, and then footsteps thundered from behind, 2 officers rushing to back up Brooks. Evelyn's eyes darted, the decision made. She fled. The officers sprinted after her, but Evelyn disappeared into the labyrinth of the hospital's old wings, swallowed by darkness and rain. Angela Brooks dropped to one knee, meeting Sofia's frightened eyes. You did so well, she said gently. You're safe now, I promise. But inside, Brooks knew the promise was fragile. Evelyn Carter was still out there, and the storm had not yet passed. Sometimes, the greatest strength is not in chasing vengeance, but in protecting innocence. A child's voice, fragile yet unwavering, can be the compass that reminds us of what truly matters. In their eyes, we rediscover the hope we once lost. The storm showed no sign of easing. Rain lashed against the hospital windows, lightning carving brief flashes of white across the city skyline. Inside, tension wrapped around every corridor like a silent alarm. Everyone felt it. Evelyn Carter had not given up. In the ICU, Jonathan Reed sat propped against his pillows, his breath shallow but stronger than before. Machines hummed around him, steady and vigilant. He knew why Detective Brooks had placed extra guards outside his door. He knew Evelyn would come for him. And a part of him believed he deserved it. He stared at the ceiling, the weight of his past pressing like lead on his chest, the lawsuits he had crushed, the whistleblowers silenced, the broken families left behind. Daniel Carter's name echoed loudest among them, a ghost refusing to fade. I built my empire on lives, he muttered under his breath, and now the debt is due. Down in the sublevels of the hospital, Evelyn Carter moved like a phantom. She had stripped away the lab coat and disguise, her dark clothes blending with shadow. She carried only a small metal case in one hand, the syringe from earlier gone. This was something far more dangerous. Inside the case lay a vial of concentrated cyanide solution connected to a crude dispersal device. She had designed it to be activated inside Reed's room, its invisible cloud ensuring no machine or guard could save him. Every step she took was fueled by her brother's memory. Daniel's voice, his laughter, the way his hope had dimmed after Reed's betrayal, it all propelled her forward. She whispered to herself, "Tonight, Daniel, you will be avenged." Detective Brooks, meanwhile, was in constant motion. She checked in with every security post, her instincts sharp, her nerves raw. She had seen Evelyn's hesitation with Sofia, but she knew hesitation didn't erase intent. Evelyn was brilliant, desperate, and cornered, 3 things that made her more dangerous than ever. Angela paused outside Reed's room, looking at him through the window. His eyes met hers, and for the first time she saw not the billionaire titan, but a weary man haunted by consequence. "Detective," Reed rasped, "if she makes it here, don't protect me. She has every reason to want me gone." Angela shook her head firmly. "You don't get to decide that, Mr. Reed. My job is to stop her, not to weigh her pain against your guilt." He gave a bitter half-smile. Maybe that's what justice really is. Something colder than mercy. Before Angela could answer, her radio crackled, a voice from the east stairwell. "We've got movement. Possible subject heading toward ICU." Angela's pulse spiked. "It's her." She drew her weapon and motioned to the guards. "Lock this floor down. She's coming." Evelyn ascended the stairwell like a shadow climbing toward its prey. Her footsteps were soundless against the storm's roar. At the final landing, she opened the case, attaching the vial to the dispersal nozzle, her hands steady despite the adrenaline. At the far end of the corridor, Sofia and her mother were being ushered away by a nurse, unaware of how close danger now crept. Sofia glanced back once, her small voice carrying, "Be careful, Detective Brooks." Angela heard it, and the words struck her with unexpected force. She tightened her grip, moving into position as the stairwell door creaked open. The hunter had arrived. Evelyn Carter stepped into the corridor, eyes locked on the guarded ICU door. Her path was straight, her intent unshakable. Guards raised their weapons, shouting commands, but she didn't falter. Her voice, calm and cutting, echoed down the hall. "Jonathan Reed, tonight you answer for Daniel." And with that, the final confrontation began. When vengeance reaches its breaking point, it is not just the guilty who stand in danger, but all who dwell within the storm it creates. True justice demands courage, not only to face evil, but to confront the shadows within ourselves. The storm outside roared like a living thing, rattling the hospital's very bones. In the ICU corridor, the tension was thicker than the air itself. Guards braced at the door, their weapons trembling slightly under the weight of the moment. At the far end, Evelyn Carter stood poised, the dispersal device clutched tightly in her hand, her eyes burning with fury. Jonathan Reed, weak but lucid, forced himself upright in his bed. Through the glass window he could see her, his judge, his executioner. His chest tightened with dread, but also with a grim understanding. He had built this moment with his own hands. Angela Brooks took her place in the middle of the corridor, her gun drawn but her voice calm. "Evelyn, it ends here." Evelyn's gaze never left Reed. "Step aside, detective. You don't know what this man has done. My brother, Daniel, believed in saving lives. Reed stole that, buried him, and let others die in the shadows of his greed. If I let him live, then what was Daniel suffering for?" Angela shook her head slowly. "I know your pain. I saw it when you looked at Sofia. That little girl carries the same grief you do. But you saw her hope, Evelyn. Don't trade your brother's memory for something he would never have wanted." Evelyn's jaw clenched. He wanted truth. He wanted justice. This, she raised the device, is justice. The guards shouted warnings, but no one fired. The corridor was frozen in a breathless standoff, thunder cracking above as if the heavens themselves watched. Inside his room, Reed pressed his hand against the glass. His voice, hoarse but steady, cut across the silence. "She's right." Angela turned her head sharply. "Don't!" Reed's eyes locked with Evelyn's. "I destroyed your brother. I destroyed many families. I built a machine that turned human lives into numbers on a screen. Daniel tried to stop me and I crushed him for it. If this is the price, then take it. I won't fight you." For the first time, Evelyn faltered. Her grip on the device wavered, her breath catching. This wasn't how she imagined it. Not Reed begging, not the man she hated exposing the rot inside himself. Angela stepped closer, her voice soft but firm. "Evelyn, listen. He's admitting his guilt. That's the beginning of justice, not the end of it. If you kill him, the story ends with his death. But if you let him live, the world will hear the truth from his own lips. That's the justice your brother deserved." Tears shimmered in Evelyn's eyes, though she tried to blink them away. Her hand trembled. For the first time in years, doubt entered her resolve. Reed's voice cracked as he pressed his forehead against the glass. "I can't undo what I've done, but I can stop it from happening again. Daniel's name will not be forgotten, not if I live to carry it." The words pierced Evelyn's armor like nothing else could. She could see Daniel's face in her mind, not in despair, but in the days before. The hopeful young man who wanted to change the world for the better. Would this act honor him or betray him? Angela extended her free hand. "Give it to me, Evelyn. Let your brother's memory guide you back to who you were, not what you've become." The storm thundered one final time, shaking the building. Evelyn's knees buckled, her strength draining, the device slipping from her fingers. It clattered to the floor, rolling harmlessly against the wall. Silence. Then Evelyn collapsed into tears, whispering Daniel's name over and over. Angela lowered her weapon and signaled the guards to move. As they secured Evelyn, Angela knelt beside her, resting a steady hand on her shoulder. "You loved your brother," Angela said quietly. "That love is still your strength. Let it save you now." Jonathan Reed leaned back against his bed, tears slipping down his own face. For the first time in decades, he allowed himself to feel the full weight of remorse. And in that corridor, broken lives collided, not in death, but in the fragile, painful birth of truth. The fiercest storms are not those outside our windows, but the ones raging in our hearts. When vengeance falters and truth is spoken, healing begins, not by erasing the past, but by transforming its pain into a compass for the future. The morning sun pierced through the clouds, casting golden streaks across St. Mary's Medical Center. The storm had passed, leaving the city washed clean, streets glistening with the remnants of rain. Inside the hospital, the air felt lighter, as if the walls themselves exhaled relief. Evelyn Carter had been taken into custody, her rage tempered by tears and the weight of her own conscience. She would face justice, not vengeance. Detective Angela Brooks watched as officers led her away, her mind already turning toward recovery. For the hospital, for Reed, and most of all, for Sofia. Jonathan Reed, though still weak, sat in his hospital room. He was quiet, reflecting on the wreckage his ambition had caused. Every life touched, every voice ignored, every line of code that turned humans into statistics, it all pressed down on him like a relentless tide. He had survived, but survival was only the beginning. He had been given a second chance, a chance to make amends, and he intended to take it. When Sofia Bennett entered the room, clutching her rosary and holding her mother's hand, Reed's eyes softened. She was small but unwavering, a voice that had pierced through years of indifference. "Mr. Reed," she said quietly, "you're going to be okay, right?" Reed nodded slowly, a faint smile forming. "Yes, thanks to you, Sofia. You saved more than just me. You reminded everyone that even the smallest voice matters." Sofia's eyes lit up, and for a moment the weight of her own losses seemed lighter. She glanced toward her mother, who smiled through tears, pride and relief mingling in her expression. In the weeks that followed, Reed took action. He deactivated the flawed AI systems in his company, created scholarships in Daniel Carter's name, and founded programs to ensure hospitals listened to every patient and their families. Sofia, recognized for her courage and insight, became the first chief child safety advocate, her role dedicated to teaching medical staff the importance of noticing the details even children might see. Elena watched her daughter grow with a quiet pride, amazed that the tragedy which had once darkened their lives could now inspire hope and change for countless others. Months later, in a sunlit auditorium, Sofia stood before a group of doctors, nurses, and medical students. She held a small microphone, her voice steady and clear. "Even a child can see what others miss," she began. "Even the smallest voice can speak the truth, and when we listen, truly listen, we can save lives. My papa couldn't be saved, but we can honor him by helping others. That is the power of courage and the power of hope." The room was silent, rapt with attention. Adults, seasoned by years of experience, were humbled by the wisdom of a child. Outside, the hospital's garden bloomed in early spring. The smell of fresh earth and new flowers filled the air, a quiet promise of renewal. Reed, Sofia, and her mother walked together, each step forward a testament to the lessons learned, the lives changed, and the resilience of the human spirit. And in the soft rustle of leaves, the city seemed to whisper a single truth. No voice is too small, no heart too young to make a difference. Even in the darkest storms, light can return. Courage, compassion, and the willingness to be heard are the true measures of strength. One voice, no matter how small, can ripple outward to transform the world, teaching us that hope, action, and empathy are timeless gifts we all can share.